Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." Someone is losing interest in you right now, and your instinct is telling you to do exactly the wrong thing, to chase harder, to prove your worth, to fix whatever you think is broken. But here's the truth that will save you months of suffering and self-destruction. The moment you sense someone pulling away, the only power move is to pull away faster. Not out of spite, not out of games, but because your response to their withdrawal determines whether you keep your dignity or lose yourself completely. Most people get this catastrophically wrong. They panic, they cling, they become the desperate version of themselves they swore they'd never be. And in doing so, they guarantee the exact outcome they're trying to prevent. By the end of this video, you'll understand the one counterintuitive action that either saves the relationship or saves you from wasting years on someone who was never fully committed. You'll learn why your natural instinct is your enemy, what actually happens in the other person's mind when you chase, and the exact psychological principle that determines whether someone comes back or disappears forever. This isn't about playing games. This is about understanding power dynamics that most people don't see until it's too late. Here's what's actually happening when someone loses interest. And it's not what you think. You believe it's about something you did wrong, something you can fix. So you analyze every conversation, replay every interaction. Convince yourself that if you just explain better, try harder, be more understanding, they'll see your value again. But you've misdiagnosed the problem entirely. Their loss of interest has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with perceived scarcity. The moment you became too available, too accommodating, too predictable, you stopped being a challenge. And humans, whether they admit it or not, value what they have to work for and devalue what comes too easily. Robert Greene wrote in The Art of Seduction, "The greatest power in seduction is absence. Not presence, not effort, absence, because absence creates the space for desire to regenerate. When you're always there, always available, always trying, you remove all mystery, all tension, all the natural push and pull that keeps attraction alive. You become furniture, familiar, taken for granted. And the paradox is this: the more you try to close the distance they're creating, the faster they run, because now you're not just available, you're desperate, and desperation is the death of desire. So here's what most people do wrong. They sense the withdrawal, and they increase their investment. More texts, more calls, more efforts to spend time together, more questions about what's wrong, more reassurance seeking, more emotional dumping. They think, if I just show them how much I care, they'll remember why they cared too. But this strategy has never worked in the history of human relationships because you're operating from a position of loss, of fear, of scarcity. And that energy repels people faster than anything else. You're essentially saying, I need you more than you need me, and I'll do anything to keep you. And the moment that dynamic is established, it's over. Not because people are cruel, but because we're biologically wired to move toward challenge and away from certainty. Here's the move nobody tells you about. The moment you sense someone pulling away, you match their energy, and then you go one step further. They text less, you text even less. They make fewer plans. You stop making plans altogether. They seem distant. You become unavailable, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as a mirror. You're showing them what their life looks like when you're not in it. And this does one of two things. Either they realize what they're losing and they change, or they don't. And you get your answer without wasting months in a slow death spiral. Nietzsche said, "The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die." When someone is pulling away, that relationship in its current form is dying. You can either cling to the corpse, or you can shed that skin and see what emerges. Most people are so terrified of loss that they'll hold on to something dead for years, rather than face the brief pain of letting go. But here's what they don't understand. The relationship you're trying to save doesn't exist anymore. The person who used to choose you has already changed. You're fighting for a memory, not a reality. So what actually happens when you pull back? First, you stop the bleeding. Every desperate action you take while they're withdrawing is another nail in the coffin. You're making yourself less attractive with every needy text, every "are we okay" conversation, every attempt to force connection that isn't there. When you stop the damage. You stop giving them reasons to feel suffocated. You stop proving that you're the low-value option they're trying to escape. Second, you create space for them to actually miss you. Right now, they can't miss you because you're everywhere. You're too present, too available. Missing someone requires absence, and if you're always there, filling the void before they even feel it, how can they realize what they're losing? Third, and this is crucial, you reclaim your power, because right now they have all of it. They're the one deciding whether to engage, whether to respond, whether to make time. You're waiting, hoping, reacting to whatever scraps they throw your way. But the moment you stop chasing, you take your power back. You stop being the one who needs. You become the one who chooses, and that shift changes everything. Suddenly, you're no longer the sure thing, you're the one who might leave, and that uncertainty, that possibility of loss, that's what reignites interest. Not your explanations, not your efforts, the fear of losing you. Here's the brutal truth most people can't handle. If pulling back doesn't bring them closer, they were never yours to begin with. They were someone you were convenient for. Someone you filled a void for temporarily, someone who enjoyed your attention but never fully committed, and discovering this hurts. But it's infinitely better than discovering it 3 years from now, after you've wasted your precious time on someone who was always 1 foot out the door. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Someone losing interest in you is not the problem. Your desperate attempt to prevent it is the problem, because that attempt costs you everything. Your dignity, your self-respect, your time, your energy, and worst of all, your ability to attract something real. Because while you're obsessing over someone who's halfway gone, you're completely unavailable to someone who would choose you fully. So here's the specific action. The next time they reach out, you wait. You don't respond immediately. You don't pour your heart out. You match their energy with slightly less enthusiasm. When they suggest plans, you're busy, not playing games. Actually busy, because you've started filling your life with things that don't revolve around them. You've remembered that you existed before them, and you'll exist after them. And that energy, that subtle shift from "please choose me" to "I'm choosing myself," that's what changes the entire dynamic. And one of two things happens. They realize you're not waiting around anymore, and they step up. They start initiating. They start putting in effort. They start acting like someone who doesn't want to lose you. Or, and this is just as valuable, they don't. They let you drift away. They accept the distance, and in doing so, they give you the answer you needed. They show you that they were never going to be what you needed them to be. And that clarity, as painful as it is a gift. Because now you can stop wondering, stop hoping, stop wasting time on a one-sided connection. The moral of this is simple but profound. You cannot control whether someone chooses you, but you can control whether you choose yourself. And choosing yourself means refusing to beg for what should be given freely, refusing to convince someone of your worth, refusing to shrink yourself to fit into someone's half-hearted commitment. When someone loses interest, the question isn't, how do I get them back? The question is, why am I fighting for someone who isn't fighting for me? And once you truly ask yourself that question, the answer becomes obvious. Lao Tzu said, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." Let go of who you've been in this dynamic, the one who chases, the one who explains, the one who tries harder, and become what you might be, someone who understands their value enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't see it. That's not cold. That's not cruel. That's self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. It either pulls them back or it attracts something better. Either way, you win. Stop trying to save what's dying. Start building what's worth living.